Welcome to Articulated, where we analyze action figures from paint to pivot. I'm Glenn.
I'm Eddie.
And this is the Metacom Mafex No.88 Venom.
Venom, aka Eddie Brock, was created by David Michelinie and Todd McFarlane in 1988's The Amazing Spider-Man number 299, but didn't make his full appearance until issue 300. As Venom, Eddie is granted many of the same abilities as Spider-Man, through whom the Venom symbiote has inherited many of its powers. Unlike Spider-Man, Venom can produce organic webbing without the use of web shooters, and can cancel out Spidey's spider sense, giving Eddie a unique advantage against the wall crawler in combat. Brock remained as Venom until 2004, but after a brief stint as Anti-Venom in 2008, only recently returned to the Venom moniker in 2018's Venom number 150.
The figure itself is based on the character's first appearance as drawn by Todd McFarlane. The lack of bulbous, protruding, tongue-fanged alternate head gives its origins away, as it wasn't until Erik Larsen took over penciling for The Amazing Spider-Man that Venom was depicted with the long, saliva-drenched lingua we see him with so often today.
This is the first time Venom has appeared within the Mafex line, and one of a string of comic-based figures following the release of Spider-Man in 2018. If you'd like to see a review of that figure, and it just so happens to be our first review ever, click the eye icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen.
Venom has a ton of accessories, many of which parallel those of Spider-Man, and includes 6 total pairs of hands: fisted, tensioned, gripping, wall stabbing, trigger fingered, and a magnetic pair of wall stabbing hands with a complementary pair of magnetic feet. 3 total interchangeable heads, grinning, open mouth, and unmasked with neck piece, 4 web strands, 2 shorter and 2 longer, and of course, a Mafex stand.
This figure is 100% new sculpt. The body is uniformly smooth except for white sections that have a thinly indented edging. The front and back of the spider symbol connects on his sides, conveniently avoiding the separate shoulder and arm joints which work to keep the paint and sculpt intact. His build is appropriately beefy, with a tinge of an alien DNA giving his silhouette an inhuman quality. In other words, his lats are extremely exaggerated and his chest is broad while his waist remains narrow. While exaggerated, that does call back to Eddie Brock's origin as a bodybuilder.
The open mouth head is assembled with 2 different pieces, making the lower jaw almost look like it's articulated, but alas, it is not. It doesn't fit with the style, but it would have been cool to get an interchangeable tongue to recreate the look Erik Larsen popularized and Mark Bagley perfected. The unmasked head is nicely sculpted and fits stylistically with Peter's despite the differing artistic inspiration. The eyebrows especially indicating McFarlane's style if a little anime-esque. The additional neck piece seems to be the same sculpt as the standard neck piece with different deco. With every other detail being both sculpted and painted, it would have been nice to see some sculpting on the receding symbiote neckline. But at least the unmasked head is a better attempt than Hasbro's swollen and rotund pumpkin of a likeness.
Compared to Spider-Man's web lines, Venom's are totally new and have a much more chaotic design which fits Venom's personality well. It looks like 2 strands were originally sculpted then mirrored to give each hand something unique looking to hold. Gripping and finger gun hands can be used to hold the web strands, while the fist can double as web-slinging hands.
On proportions, Venom stands 6.25 inches tall, or nearly 16 centimeters when his drop ball legs are fully contracted. He's this many heads tall, which is fine for an alien.
While Venom is taller than the Mafex Spider-Man, he falls a little short compared to certain Marvel Legends offerings. Carnage from the Monster Venom wave should be at least a few inches shorter proportionally. Different sources give different measurements as to Eddie's height, but Venom is generally drawn significantly bigger, purely by eyeball. Venom still looks a little smaller even for the true 1/12 scale Mafex line. As of now, his legs look ever so slightly stout, so I think he would have benefited from an extra 1/4 inch distributed between his thighs and lower legs.
Despite his height, Venom is still exceptionally sculpted, allowing for a plethora of articulation without breaking up the sculpt. It's only appropriate that the score reflects this masterful engineering, awarding Sculpt a 9 out of 10. Venom is made up of 33 unique pieces, 50 counting interchangeable parts. Only 10 of those pieces have no paint applied: elbows, wrists, inner thighs, knees, and ankles. But because they're cast in the same dark blue that highlights the rest of the figure, they're practically invisible to the eyes. Most of the figure is cast in black, while a blue spray is applied to bring out the depth in the sculpt. This helps transitions between limbs look nearly seamless. However, the torso, especially the crotch, doesn't have this spray applied, aside from the glutes, making the transition between the lower torso and legs feel much more abrupt.
Instead of a heavy spray of blue on the limbs, the figure could have possibly benefited from a more subtle approach to the blue highlighting.
Contrast between the black of the body and white of the chest symbol, hand patches, and eyes is extremely sharp. Teeth are also painted white on both Venom heads, but are given a faint blue wash to differentiate them from the other whites of the suit. A blood-red tongue can be seen through the slots of the sharp fangs of the open-mouth head, and the unmasked head gets the same face-printed treatment as the Spider-Man release, but actually looks to be a slightly higher resolution even in the short time between releases. As previously mentioned, the extra neck is simply painted to imply the transition between Sculpt and Symbiote, instead of also being sculpted, but could have also benefited from a little black highlight as well.
Like the Spider-Man release, Venom's web lines lack any wash to the simply casted white. And like that release, could have used some light blue or gray to bring out the details in the sculpt. Like how the sculpt helps differentiate the characters' personalities, it would have been cool to see paint used in the same way.
Ultimately, this is a minute issue and doesn't detract from the mostly effective paint job, earning Venom an 8 out of 10.
Venom has 40 points of articulation, which is much more than we gave Spider-Man, who has an equal amount of articulation, but we'll explain why we were wrong in the original review. It mostly comes down to the nuances of the wrists and ankles, so make sure to pay attention.
The head sits on the neck with a double ball peg, while the neck uses a single ball peg to attach to the upper torso. This allows the head and neck to be spun independently of each other, effectively making the neck a floating piece, but one that still gives a little extra range of motion. The double ball peg of the head is also bent slightly, and can be positioned differently to give better range of motion in a desired direction.
Down from the head, the shoulder balls attach to the upper torso with a ball joint through butterfly-like pieces, which are themselves ball joints. The upper arm attaches to the shoulder with a bicep swivel, and the elbows are double jointed. Ball wrist attached to the lower arm and hands together, allowing for rotation and hinging of the hand on any axis. We thus count it as 2 different points of articulation, something we failed to do in Spider-Man's review.
The upper torso attaches to the lower with a single ball peg, as does the lower torso to the crotch. This gives the torso a little extra range of movement forward and back, while allowing the crotch and upper torso to swivel independently of each other. Drop ball pegs attach the crotch and legs together that allow for extra movement when flexing forward. The thighs can swivel, and the knees are double jointed. The ankles, like the wrists, allow the feet to rotate like a boot cut, pivot independently, as well as hinge up and down. Finally, there's a hinge at the toe.
This really is a near-perfect articulation scheme, and one that I wish was a little more adopted in the American market. Every articulation point has a distinct purpose, and range of motion is excellent, earning Venom a perfect 10 out of 10.
Like the Spider-Man figure before it, Mafex has created a near-definitive version of Venom in plastic form. If you're a big fan of the 90s design or just want the most iconic representation of a character for your shelf, this figure is for you. But of course, the price point can hold some people back at 8,000 yen or about $70. Personally, I ordered from Big Bad Toy Store just to avoid the hassle of international shipping, but more frugal options are available, or at least they were at the time of purchase.
If you don't have the money, we can't really recommend an alternative at this point. The amazing Yamaguchi Venom is too stylized for our taste, and the Marvel Legends singles released recently are on a horribly outdated body. Perhaps it'll be time for Hasbro to give it another shot once Venom 2 rolls around.
With all that being said, Venom earns a combined score of 9 out of 10, and we personally agree wholeheartedly. This is the closest action figures have ever come to a definitive classic Venom, so what's a few millimeters when everyone's crouching down anyway? If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Seriously.
If you like what we do, subscribing, leaving a like, or sharing would help us out tremendously.
If you're on Instagram or Reddit, you can follow us at Articulated Show.
And if you have any questions, criticisms, or anything, leave us a comment and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Thanks for watching. I'm Glenn.
I'm Eddie.
And this is Articulated.